Now, for this sermon, I want it to have a soundtrack. And I would like Allison has played a lovely soundtrack, but this one, I want us to be the sermon choir. Will you do this for me? I mean, I do have a ukulele right here. Oh, who put this here? Okay, we're going to be singing this hymn a little later, so this is our warm-up session. I'll sing a line, and I want you to sing it back to me. This is my Maker's world. This is my Maker's world. I rest me in the thought. Of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. God's hands the wonders wrought. All right, all together, let's do the whole thing. Here we go. This is my Maker's world. I rest me in the thought of skies and seas, of skies and seas. God's hands the wonders wrought. All right, give yourselves a hand. That was pretty fantastic. It's also an easy way to tell who didn't have their coffee this morning. They're like, zoo, zoo, zoo. Now that's the soundtrack. Keep that in your head. We will come back to it in a little bit. But first, did I ever tell you that I grew up in Iowa? Yeah, I think I've told you that before. A land filled with cornfields. The big city of Fairbank, Iowa, is my hometown. Northeast Iowa is actually a small town. You know it's a small town when it's a big deal when the town gets its first stoplight. Yes. Put us on the map, Fairbank, Iowa. Now, I started out in Fairbank, my hometown, lived there from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. Those lovely years of adolescence. Those aren't awkward for anybody. And then after 8th grade, we moved. Not the greatest time to move. How many people want to start high school in a strange new town knowing no one? Now, we moved to this new town in Michigan. Michigan looks like a hand. So if you're from Michigan, you often show where you're from by simply holding up your hand. Just humor me. It's not weird. It's a Michigan thing. Now, I moved from Iowa to this part of Michigan, right here in the center, a town called Leslie, Michigan. Now, Leslie, this place was the big city. They had a stoplight and a McDonald's. It's a bit disorienting moving from place to place, especially at some of those transitional and developmental years of life in middle school and high school. Iowa was home. It's what I knew. It's how I understood the world. Cornfields, cornfields, cornfields. And then Michigan, this strange new land. We were on the move. Now, Michigan became home for a while, and then I decided, let's find the real big city. And my wife and I moved to New York City, where you have a few stoplights. Now, for some people, and at times it was for me, I'll be honest, it can be disorienting going from a place you're familiar with to this new land. I mean, in New York, you don't make eye contact with all these strangers. You can't just walk on saying hello to everyone you see unless you're Buddy the Elf. New York is a city unlike any other. And for my life, as I move from place to place to place, there might be times when you feel a bit disoriented. Have you ever felt moments in your life when it's almost as if the rug has been pulled out from under you? The ground that you're so used to standing on is no longer as secure as it once was. For me, I found this in these moves. Now, luckily, each move was able to give me a place to land and a place to call home. But for our friend Jacob, in the story we read, he found himself looking for that place to land. Now let's get some backstory on Jacob so we can understand a bit more about Jacob's adventure. Jacob is the character we read about a moment ago from the book of Genesis who laid down and had this dream where he heard this lovely inspiration to write a song called Stairway to Heaven. Close. Jacob, before he gets to that point, Jacob has a twin brother. Jacob's brother is named Esau. Let me hear you say Esau. Jacob and Esau were twins. Esau was a little bit older, like barely older, but the older brother got everything. Jacob and Esau's parents, Isaac and Rebekah, Isaac favored the older son. And so Rebekah, well, she looked after Jacob, the younger son. He was a bit of a mama's boy. Now, Jacob and Esau didn't always get along. And Jacob felt like, wait, shouldn't I get a bit more of the fair share of the land our family owns? And that wasn't going to happen until Jacob and his mother Rebekah came up with a plan to trick his father Isaac and take the land from his brother Esau. Now that's another story and another sermon for another day, but imagine if you are Esau and the land, the inheritance that you were going to get, suddenly you find out your younger brother got it. You might be a little upset. And Esau, in this case, was out for blood. So Jacob isn't just on the move, Jacob is on the run. Jacob is running for his life to a land called Haran, where his uncle lived. Now, Jacob, in this time, they didn't have churches on every corner or a temple or a synagogue everywhere you go. In this time, the central place of worship would have been in the family community and in the neighboring communities that made up that area. So the family would be the center where it all resides. The connection with God, with the divine. And in the case of Jacob, he's the son of Isaac, the grandson of Abraham. Yes, that Abraham, Father Abraham, who had many sons and daughters. Many sons and daughters had Father Abraham. I'm one of them, and so are you. Okay. VBS memories. Now, Jacob, running for his life, leaving everything he knows, even leaving the God that he knows, running for his life for a new, strange land. This seems a bit more disorienting than simply an adolescent moving from Iowa to Michigan or a young adult moving from Michigan to New York City. This is one of those moments where everything you knew no longer is there. And so Jacob, fearing for his life, lays down, finds the softest thing he can, a rock, and goes to sleep. Imagine Jacob lying there, head on a rock, looking up at the sky, the clouds, the stars. God, are you somewhere out there? And he awakes with a dream, perhaps humming a tune. Now let's think more about God. Specifically, I want to think a bit about the God I don't believe in. And then we'll get to the God that I do. I don't believe in a God who is constrained to certain places. I don't believe in a God who is distant and removed. I don't believe in a God with a long gray beard who sits on a throne flying a spaceship called heaven. I don't believe in a God who is making a list and checking it twice, gonna find out who's naughty and nice. I don't believe in a God who has a quiver full of lightning bolts ready to throw anytime you make God angry. I don't believe in that God anymore. Sometimes there are moments in your life that can radically shift the way you see God. Whether it's leaving one place you called home to an unknown. God, are you going to be there with me? Running for your life, taking a nap on a rock, waking up to see a stairway to heaven. God was in this place, and I did not know. For me, there were moments when I began to see God as bigger than the boxes I put God in. Or should I say, bigger than the boxes I put Him in, that being one of the boxes right there. There are all of these images, and one could say all you ever have is an image of God. The story of Genesis at the very beginning tells us that on the sixth day, God made men and women in God's image. And then there have been Christian theologians who said, and humans have returned the favor every day since. The problem with these gods that I used to believe in but don't anymore, these somewhere out there, these quiverful of lightning bolts, this I'm gonna get you if you do something wrong, this God sitting on a throne, distant and potentially bored. The problem is that this God can lead you to phrases like, well, God let this happen, or even worse, God caused this to happen. Now, for me, the boxes that I had to hold my image of God, they were broken when I began seeing the world as an ever-expanding place. I thought I knew where God was, right here in this container, and then I discover, wait, God is in this other part of the world, and these people who look and sound different than me? Maybe I need to discover a God who has been here all along, like Jacob waking up from a dream saying, God was in this place, and I did not know it. Now let's talk about the God that I do believe in. I'm more interested in spending time here. The God that I do believe in, God is not a being on a throne, spaceship called heaven, arms and legs. God is not a being. God is, as Paul Tillich says, God is the ground of being, that which holds all of us in existence. God is not stuck in one particular box with a steeple on top. God is always breaking out of boxes in all parts of God's creation. God is not stuck and unmoving. God is ever moving with us as we find ourselves in a moving world. God is not far away, but God is close as your very breath. God is not somewhere out there. God is right here and everywhere. Now, I began to understand this image of God one summer when I was leading about 100 middle schoolers at a week-long camp. Now, thank you for your pity. Oh, 100 middle schoolers, very hard. Yes, yes. Now, we spent the week asking the question, where is God? Where is God? Is God stuck somewhere, or is God everywhere? Now, imagine you're there with me. You can be my middle schoolers. We're walking through the woods at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going on a scavenger hunt on the other side of camp. We make our way through the woods, and we come to a clearing about half the size of a football field. Woods all around, clearing with an empty fire pit in the middle. We come up to the fire pit, and we stand in one big circle. I know we're going to come back here later tonight. And I invite everyone first to look up, and we see the sun shining and the blue sky and the clouds in the air. Then I invite everyone to look around, and over the shoulders of the other campers, they see the forest and the woods and the trees. And then we go on our way and have our scavenger hunt. Now, fast forward a couple hours later, we've all eaten dinner, and we are ready for one final campfire before we go home the next day. So we walk back out into the woods. We find ourselves once again in this clearing, only now with a campfire burning in the middle. And we stand around this campfire. I invite everyone once again to look up. And we see the sky filled with stars. I invite everyone to look around. And they see nothing but the glow of their faces and the darkness behind them. And it's here that I ask, What happened to the trees? Did they go away? No, they're still there, says the sixth grader. We just can't see them because it's nighttime now. Smart sixth grader. Okay, what about when you look up? What are those things? Stars. Were they here earlier? I mean, I didn't see them when we came out this afternoon. Well, Jim, there's this thing called the atmosphere, and the reflections make it look this way during the day, but then at night we can see the star. Smart sixth grader, I told you. Sometimes we might think that God is like a giant game of peekaboo. If we can't see God, then God's not there. But like these sixth graders were catching on to, the stars are still there. Sometimes you just can't see them the same way. The trees are still surrounding you. Sometimes the environment just changes. God is always present. And as we looked around this campfire and saw these glowing faces, we knew God was present in each and every one of us. So Jacob, waking up from a dream, God was in this place and I did not know. Are there ever times that you wake up and you need to be reminded that God was already in this place? The ground was already holy. The bush has always been burning. God was in the world, and though the world was made through God, the world doesn't always recognize God, says the writer of the Gospel of John. I invite each of us to take a deep breath. This simple act that you do 21,000 times a day, yes, I counted, just kidding. This simple act that you do whether you mean to or not, as a reminder that God is always right there. Let's think again about those clouds that Jacob might have seen as he fell asleep. The clouds that my middle school students saw that afternoon at camp. Now, the Bible gives us images where God is a cloud. And I think that cloud image, at times it can be problematic because it puts God way out there, but I think that cloud image can be quite helpful. Have you ever walked into a fog or seen a cloud pass through a mountain as you stood on the summit? God is a cloud because a cloud, good luck keeping that thing in a box. It's going to find every crack that you didn't know was there and make its way into the world, offering some shade and bringing some thunder. Now, a cloud, I think, goes even farther because the author of Hebrews, a book in the New Testament, the author of Hebrews, she writes about a great cloud of witnesses. This cloud, which I think is just as divine, this great cloud of witnesses, not Christians, witnesses, people who have seen and responded to what God is doing in the world, this great cloud of witnesses, well, I'm looking at it right now. And this cloud is the cloud of God in our world. A cloud of God that will move as the world moves. God is not stuck while we go on ahead of ourselves. God is always moving with us. I was on the move when I was growing up. Jacob was on the move, on the run, in this little incident that led him to the realization that God was in this place, and I did not know. And I believe that God is also on the move with us. You can't ever leave God behind because God is the ground of your very being. Every step you take, every breath is filled with God. This is my Maker's world. I rest me in the thought of skies and seas, of rocks and trees, God's hand, the wonders wrought. Let's try that out one more time, choir. This is my Maker's world. I rest me in the thoughts of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. God's hand and the wonders wrought. Amen.